Salutations to you, and here we go. It is the Week 7 recap here on the Audible. That's right, it's the footballguys.com podcast. It is Cecil Lammey. It is Sigmund Bloom. We are going beyond the box score, and Bloom, we have seen it all today. Just when we say that every week, like, wow, what a wild week. But no, seriously, we've seen it all today.
Well, there were some massive games. Maybe not necessarily in lineups, though. Maybe on benches. Games that we may never see again. Although, didn't Marvin Jones have 5 touchdowns once against the Jets? Sorry, Chase.
It seems like that. I thought this was his career high, though. Spoiler alert for a little bit later on when we get to that game. But it is the LA Rams versus the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to start with that one. 37-10, the final score. Matt Ryan gets bounced from this. Again, we're going to get to that, because we've got to start with the Rams side first. And Jared Goff, 268, 2 touchdowns. All right, you thought there'd be a little bit more, especially when you score 37 points. Robert Woods gets 5 for 80. Brandon Cooks, 4 for 59. Gerald Everett, 4 for 50 and a touch. Todd Gurley gets a receiving touchdown off a catch for 13 yards. And then 18 for 41 on the ground. So, again, you kind of thought there'd be more. Darrell Henderson, hot DFS play, 11 for 31. 2.8 to carry. By the way, Cooper Kupp 6 for 50, if I didn't mention that. So, Bloom, it's an easy win. It's a big win for the Rams. We knew it would be, right? Atlanta's awful, but maybe not in the way we thought the Rams could score 35-plus points.
Yeah, honestly, disappointing, really. We look at this game as a whole. Atlanta's rock bottom. This is what the bottom looks like. I don't know how much longer Dan Quinn's going to last, but it's fait accompli that he's gone. And Thomas Dimitroff might be lucky to survive this year. But Atlanta, yeah, there's those numbers that represent the peak. We hit the floor. But for the Rams, since they're 4-3, do you feel like they're a good team? I mean, everything's going fine, but they're 4-3. So, next week they play Cincinnati, so they're going to be 5-3. Everything's going okay. It doesn't feel that way. Jared Goff had a good fantasy game. It didn't feel like he was playing that much better, at least he compared to the baseline against Atlanta, but he had to put up good numbers. Todd Gurley had a beautiful over-the-shoulder catch, the best play he's made all year, honestly, but not much there as a runner. The wide receivers were all acceptable, Cooks and Woods and Kupp, but none of those spike games that other wide receivers have been posting against Atlanta. Darrell Henderson got an opportunity. He didn't do anything. Maybe the only player that really overachieved here was Gerald Everett, who was a frequent target, who scored a touchdown. And then if you did play the Rams, because the offensive line for the Falcons has been terrible, it hit in part because you got one of 2 of the cheapest defense special team touchdowns I've ever seen. 2 on the same weekend. This one was a fumbled punt by Russell Gage with about 15 seconds left when the game was totally out of hand. So again, 4-3, going to Cincinnati, going to be 5-3 probably. Doesn't feel like things are going well, but on the wins and losses, got to be satisfied.
Yeah, well, let's get to that Falcons side of things as we go through what they had to do without Matt Ryan. 16-27, 159, and an interception before he was bounced. Here comes Matt Schaub, 6 for 6 for 65 and a touchdown. Okay, Austin Hooper gets that touchdown in garbage time, 4 for 46 and a touch. Julio Jones, 6 for 93. Interesting battle between him and Jalen Ramsey today. That was fun to watch. Calvin Ridley, 4 for 30. Then we get to the backfield. It's Devonta Freeman, 7 for 19. Wanted more than that. Ito Smith, a carry for 7. Freeman also had a couple catches for 6 yards. So nothing's working for this team, and it just leads you to guess, Bloom, when's Dan Quinn going to get fired?
Right. I mean, see, this is usually how it goes, right? In the ebb and flow of a season, when a team hits bottom, that's the sign that it's time for just a bloodletting, a symbolic ritual to say we're trying to put this behind us, and that's Dan Quinn being fired. Matt Ryan under pressure. Matt Ryan under Chiefs for the first time as a fantasy quarterback this year. Matt Ryan gets hurt, gets ruled out. How much was it because the game was out of hand? Next week, Atlanta gets Seattle again. So I'm not sure what we're going to have there. You saw some Jalen Ramsey effect here. You can't deny that. Ramsey wasn't playing his best, but you can see how this Rams defense is going to look better. There was a point in this game, Devonta Freeman got ejected. Did you see this? Aaron Donald picks him up and holds him up in the air.
Yeah.
And then Freeman just kind of tries to push his face away, really. I don't think Freeman threw a punch, and he gets ejected for that. But that was kind of a lasting image from this one. Julio Jones was okay, made a few plays in this game before it got out of hand. Austin Hooper's play was after the game was out of hand. Again, we don't know the Matt Ryan length of absence, so it's going to be a problem. Seattle's coming in, sees all I'm thinking is, how did Philadelphia lose to the Falcons?
The world may never know. Hi. Okay, Falcons, got to get that fixed and got to get it right. Next, speaking of getting it right, Dolphins and Bills. Bills 31-21. Took them a little while, though, as it's like 6-0 after the first quarter. You're like, come on. 14-9 at halftime. You're like, come on. 22-point fourth quarter. So the Bills get it done. But first, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 23-35, 282 yards, one up and one down. You saw Fitzpatrick with a rushing touchdown. Kalen Ballage, the frustrating part of this now three-headed backfield. Maybe it's not that before the trade deadline with Kenyon Drake on the block. Mark Walton, their starter, 14 for 66 on the ground. Preston Williams, 6 for 82. Would have had a touchdown, pushed out of bounds. Devontae Parker gets the lone receiving touchdown, 5 for 55 and a touch. Allen Hurns, 3 for 53. Don't know who would be starting these people, but, Mike Gesicki, 4 for 41. The Dolphins put up a little bit of a fight, and then they remember, oh, yeah, we're tanking. Let's not win this one. And Buffalo surges back, of course.
You're right. Here's the pattern. Miami is competitive for part of a game, even gets a lead for the second time this year, and then they fade as the game goes on. See, for the gambling degenerates out there, there was a idea that how could this Buffalo team be favored by 17 points over anybody? And they were right. Because really, this was a 3-point win. Your cheap defensive touchdown number 2, an onside kick return for touchdown by Buffalo. But it was actually a goal line stand, as I believe that Miami was ahead and looking to expand their lead in an incredible goal line stand. Jordan Phillips, who has some history with Miami, revenge games are real, not always just narrative street. He makes a big play. Then they get an interception. Travis White picks it off without his helmet on. And then we see another rousing comeback. Now, how much can you get out of a rousing comeback against Miami? Well, Mark Walton looked good. He's a good call on the waiver wire there, although you want to see him get more involved as a receiver. Kalen Ballage, truly, like, touchdown vultures in fantasy football usually makes you sick to your stomach. This might be the sickest to our stomachs ever, watching Kalen Ballage get what little touchdowns there are in Miami. Devontae Parker got a touchdown here. Preston Williams was solid, although he didn't have a fumble. And against Buffalo's defense, too. So this is a bit of a surprise that this offense was more productive, although some of that's Ryan Fitzmagic. Drake's stock dying before our very eyes unless he's traded. A little glimmer from Mike Gesicki as we're looking long-term. But you played that Buffalo defense. You got that cheap touchdown. And for Miami, you're looking ahead. What defense will we pick up next week? Cease the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night.
Hey, what a great Monday night game.
NFL fever, catch it.
Yeah. Oof. Josh Allen, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, no INTs, 4 for 32 on the ground. Frank Gore leading the way, 11 for 55 on the ground. Devin Singletary's back, 7 for 26. Not a lot there. Smoke, yeah. John Brown and that speed, it only takes a little bit, 5 for 83 and a touchdown. Duke Williams, 1 for 23. Not a great call on the waiver wire there, Bloom, because I brought up Duke this week. But Dawson Knox, 2 for 22. Cole Beasley gets a touchdown, 3 for 16 and a touch. Yeah, I mean, the defensive performance that made you excited there at the end, but that was about it for Buffalo.
At the end, Buffalo's offense was morose. And again, they took that momentum from the defense in this one to really get going. Allen and the offense stalling out for field goals, 3 field goals in the first half. And if they had lost this game, the story would have been you can't settle for field goals against the Miami Dolphins. Well, I mean, you should be able to. And they were able to get away with that, partially because that comeback drive down the field after the goal line stand, capped with the John Brown touchdown, and then another Cole Beasley touchdown. Really, Allen came through for you in fantasy, but it wasn't a dominant day for him. The running game was real meh in this one. Not seeing Devin Singletary involved as a receiver the way he was earlier in the year, so that there's a little bit of question to his stock. TJ Yeldon was inactive, so we thought. Unleash Singletary. Got some Gore in this one too. But because they didn't control this game, they really didn't get the lean on. So Buffalo gets a win. You still have to wonder. I mean, they edged out the Jets. We'll see how good the Jets are. They edged out the Dolphins, but they only got edged out by the Patriots. So you got that going for you. Philadelphia coming, and by the time you're listening to this, we might know what Philadelphia did. So it's going to be a key game for Philadelphia either way. What you like about Buffalo, Cease, is they're a team that they clearly have unity because one side picks up the other side and they find a way to win.
And they find a way to get it done, much like Jacksonville did. Of course, their way is to run Leonard Fournette as much as possible. 27-17, the final score over the Cincinnati Bengals. Cue the Ziggy Stardust because there are changes that are going to be coming for the Bengals in a little bit. But what about Gardner Minshew? Is he holding on to this job? 15 to 32, 255, 1 touchdown, no INTs. We did hear the reports like, hey, Foles is going to start practicing this week. Okay, what does that mean for Minshew long-term? The way this team responds is, well, hand off a bunch to Leonard Fournette, 29 for 131 in this contest, couple of catches, 14 yards. And then to the receivers, we know the Bengals had that mashed up secondary. So D.D. Westbrook, 6 for 103. Cool. Chris Conley, big game, 3 for 83. DJ Chark, 3 for 53. Oh. And then Keelan Cole gets the receiving touchdown. Beautiful catch. What's his second catch of the year, whatever it is? Beautiful catch for a touchdown. 1 catch, 2 yards, 1 touchdown. So the Jaguars win, swarming defense. Andy Dalton's going to get benched. More on that in a little bit, but this comes to Jacksonville, down to Jacksonville, their formula. And what do we think about Minshew going forward?
That's the big story on the Jacksonville side, I think, is they're 3-4. They play the Jets next week. Jets coming to town, so they could easily get to 500. Do you go back to the incumbent? Is this one of those the starter doesn't lose job because of injury? This was a matchup that was heavily tilted in favor of Minshew, and he didn't make any big mistakes. Certainly, you can't say anything bad about his performance overall, considering the expectations of what we would have at the beginning of the year. Maybe he set expectations a little higher the way he played early on, but they get the win. Solid for fantasy, not really that efficient against a Cincinnati defense that was really game, especially early on in this one. D. Westbrook coming in questionable with the shoulder is your play here. Makes a terrific play downfield, snatching a ball out of the air. DJ Chark, as you put it, sees, in this matchup, we thought he was going to feast. He did catch a ball and get down to the 1 yard line. He also had a carry that went for 20 yards. He still looks good. Chris Conley got more involved in the downfield passing game. So that was a little bit of a bummer. Still going to stick with Chark the way he's been playing. Leonard Fournette's rolling. As you said, he's heavy dose. It's working. He got stuffed on 4th down. And the play design, when you give the ball to a running back like Fournette and you want him to plunge over the pile, or otherwise you want him with a head of steam, they lined him up kind of fullback depth on 4th and goal. So you could have had a touchdown there. There's another, but again, the big story here revolves around Foles versus Minshew. And the Jags at 3-4, they can beat the Jets next week. They're still alive. A lot of intrigue for this team.
Tons of intrigue for this team. And well, as our man Jason says, ball security is job security. Andy Dalton's probably going to get benched for Ryan Finley at one point. 3 interceptions, back-to-back throws, by the way, because a pick 6, and then they get the ball back. He throws another pick. 276 on the day, 1 touchdown. That's it. 1 touchdown was to Joe Mixon, who at the end of the game, they're speculating, is he hurt? Because 10 carries, 2 yards. Andy Dalton gets a rushing touchdown, I guess, helps his day. Don't think you should have had him in, but anyway. Alex Erickson was the leading receiver, 8 for 137. Auden Tate, 3 for 65. Tyler Boyd, 5 for 55. Tyler Eifert, 2 for 10. And this is it. This is what you have. So the Alex Erickson thing is cool, Bloom. It's interesting, right?
Right.
Who's Ryan Finley's favorite target? That's all I care about. Because Andy Dalton's not going to be long for the starting job.
Probably not. And look, you're not going to pin this 0-7 start on Dalton. I mean, they've been in a few games only because of Dalton. That being said, you're just looking to the future. You're turning the page. You need to see what you have in Finley. It's obvious this team is headed for a top 3, top 5 pick, a quarterback pick. So, like you said, Alex Erickson, for a while in this game, and it's not like Jacksonville's defense is a shutdown defense. Jacksonville got a defensive touchdown, though, Yannick Ngakoue, on a real feeble look at a screen pass. I don't even know what Andy Dalton was doing in that one, on that play. But Alex Erickson was the whole offense for a while. You did see some more Auden Tate. And Tate, you see that game at the catch point, the way that he can contort to make some of these catches. It's beautiful. And Tyler Boyd got a little bit in this one enough. But as you said, Mixon 10 for 2. You got a touchdown for Mixon, but it was still pretty disappointing. And in general, this looks like the kind of offense where nothing good can grow. I know that Mixon came on at the end of last year with Jeff Driscoll and offensive line problems, but this was bad. And they got the Rams next week, and the Rams were pretty ruthless against Atlanta this week. So that's not a great team to be running into right now. I'm not saying we're going to rush out to get Alex Erickson on the waiver wire either. AJ Green could be back, could be traded, won't be traded. I don't know. I don't think the Bengals know much, but you see, we have Cincinnati and Miami basically at the same point. Although one of these teams meant to get there, the other one, I don't know if they really expected this.
Yeah, who knows what they are expecting? Who knows what happened with Kirk Cousins? I guess Pat McAfee pissed him off or something. I don't know. 42-30, the final score, as the Vikings beat up on the Lions today. Kirk Cousins goes for 337, 4 touchdowns, no INTs. It's all about windows, Bloom. This window has been very good for Kirk Cousins. First window, not as good. Stephon Diggs, 7 for 142 in this one. Irv Smith making more plays, 5 for 60. Kyle Rudolph, first touchdown of the year, 5 for 58 and a touchdown. BC Johnson, Ola BC, Busy is what they called him at CSU, comes in for an injured Adam Thielen, 4 for 40 and a touchdown. Adam Thielen, 1 for 25 and a touchdown. And then he hurt his hamstring. I thought he hurt his wrist, like stopping against the wall there, but whatever. Dalvin Cook, a catch for 7 yards. By the way, CJ Ham receiving touchdown as well. But Dalvin Cook, 25 for 142 and 2 rushing touchdowns. Not a lot for Alexander Madison today, 7 for 18. So they play like this. And I know their defense, certainly we're going to get to, Xavier Rhodes having some trouble out there. But, wow, they play like this. Cousins play like that. Look out for Minnesota.
See, you got to say, when Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen complained, this team changed. Maybe Mike Zimmer isn't the kind of boss who says my way or the highway. Maybe he says, maybe your way. And it
your
worked.
Way, so I don't hit the highway.
Right. Exactly. Well put, Cease. And this one was important because if they had lost this one, they would have been swept on the road within the division. They already lost to Chicago on the road. They already lost to Green Bay on the road. So this was a very important game. And of course, Detroit was coming in, hanging their heads, not because of how they played in Green Bay, but because of the way they lost. And Matthew Stafford did what he did to keep them in this, but it was too much, even with Adam Thielen going out. And Minnesota, kind of like the Rams, I'm not sure they're a good team, but you look at the record, they got Washington next week, so they're feeling good where they are. And you can't really complain as this team is reinventing itself on the offensive side. It wasn't a shutdown day for their defense, but that didn't matter. Started off with a great catch by Adam Thielen for a touchdown, and then Ford Field has those walls within a couple of yards of the back of the end zone. He got hurt, so that sucked. You hate to see that. But Ola BC Johnson, Cease, wide receiver U, Colorado State with a touchdown here. Irv Smith gets more involved. Kyle Rudolph gets a touchdown again because Kirk Cousins, a highly efficient game. And Kirk Cousins, when things are working, Darius Slay goes out in this one. Snacks goes out in this one. They have that strong running game with Dalvin Cook. When things are working, he makes it look easy. It's when he has to create or do something on his own that things can get rougher. And then, of course, Stephon Diggs. Without Adam Thielen, can Diggs be number one? Yeah, he's a number one. So, again, Zimmer, you got to look back at that situation with Diggs. He played it well. He steered it well. Unlike the Jacksonville situation that ended with a trade, this one ends up with Diggs being a key contributor to a key win. Again, with Washington coming, they're 4-2 right now. Minnesota, you're not necessarily feeling great about your team. I'm sorry, they're 5-2 now. Not necessarily feeling great about the team based on the losses, but at the same time, they beat Oakland, they beat Philly, they beat the decent teams they faced. Looking at the head of their schedule, they're going to dodge Patrick Mahomes. They've got Dallas coming up, Seattle on the road. Of course, they've got their divisional games left, but I think this team's going to be okay after a little shaky point in October earlier.
Now, Emmanuel Sanders is on the trade block. They're fielding calls for him. Is Minnesota one of those teams? When Thielen goes down, obviously this is on my mind, Bloom, but as soon as Thielen goes down, I think, one, stupid walls at Ford Field. That's just stupid. Like, that's a hazard, obviously. And then the second thing I thought of was, well, Gary Kubiak really liked Emmanuel Sanders.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, CC, is dip into your encyclopedia of knowledge about the connections via Denver. So that's absolutely something to think about. Also with Kirk Cousins slinging the ball, with the offense being more balanced, having those key contributors on the in the passing game more important. So something to think about here, getting close to that trade deadline.
Yeah, and Sanders was one of the players, along with Von Miller, kind of talking up Kirk Cousins before the Broncos didn't get him because they couldn't get Mike Shanahan. That was going to happen, by the way, people. It was shut down. You can guess whoever shut it down, but John Elway was going to fire Vance Joseph after 1 year, bring in Mike Shanahan with Kirk Cousins. That was a package deal. And someone didn't want them to hire Mike Shanahan again. So here you are, Broncos fans. So watch out for Sanders. I know everyone says Patriots, right? Patriots are going to get Emmanuel Sanders. See, I turned it into a Broncos show, and the Broncos didn't even play today.
Exactly. That's why you had to.
Well, I had to because I had Marvin Jones Jr. on my bench for the win. But who actually started him? Danny Amendola gets 105 in this one. That's cool. But Marvin Jones Jr., Judas, 10 for 93 and 4 touchdowns. My God. Kenny Golladay, 1 for 21. That was it. That's all he could muster. J.D. McKissick was the leading rusher with 29 yards, tied with Ty Johnson. Kerryon Johnson didn't do anything. But this day was all about, my God, they cannot stop, contain, slow down. Marvin Jones Jr., Matthew Stafford, 4 touchdowns, all of them to MJJ, 364 yards passing, and fastest to 40,000, whatever the number was.
Yeah.
Bloom. Here we go. But Marvin Jones Jr., big game. If you like forgot to take him out of your lineup or something, if you actually started him, great job, because nobody was expecting this.
The ups and downs, and it was 4 against the Jets, not 5. But absolutely, it was 1. Marvin Jones even dropped a touchdown, and then Stafford went right back to him. So I'll leave Stafford sort of the best for last. Kerryon Johnson gets hurt in this one. I want to say he was seen with a brace on his knee before he left the game, riding a stationary bike. So Ty Johnson, Cecil, we'll talk about him on the way for maybe a little J.D. McKissick too. Again, Darius Slay and Damon Harrison going down here, so this team might have to change their identity a little bit. Danny Amendola had a big game. I guess it's been about a month and a half since his last big game. And then you had Kenny Golladay not doing much. I think he had a chance for a 2-point conversion maybe, but there wasn't much there. It's Matthew Stafford with a pretty valiant effort here, trying to keep up with the hole. His defense kept digging for him. And fastest to 40,000 Cease. And what surprised me about that is that, I mean, who else has already gotten 40,000? Breeze and Brady and Peyton Manning and so on. There's a lot of quarterbacks over 40,000 yards. None of them as fast as Matthew Stafford, which he had to be doing something right through all these different offensive coordinators, through the churn of different wide receivers. Oh, we missed you, Calvin Johnson. And that shows you there's something there. And when you watch this game today, you saw something there. His deep ball's been beautiful lately, making those red zone throws to Marvin Jones, putting them in perfect windows. And what does it result in? A team that was 2-0-1 is 2-3-1 now. They face the Giants. They got to win this one to keep their season going. But I thought it was really a good motif of Stafford's career cease, where there's some things you can say he must be a good quarterback, but you look at the playoff wins or ability to go deep in the playoffs, and his franchise has really kept him a la Tony Romo, a la Phillip Rivers, from getting the due that he deserves.
Yeah, definitely one of those guys as we continue on. And the Week 7 recap here on the Audible. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, help us grow the YouTube channel. You guys have done a fantastic job. Bloom, are we to 10,000 subscribers?
No, we're somewhere in the 9.9, so there's going to be something special after we get to 10,000.
9.9.
So, yeah,
okay.
Yeah, 10,000 subscribers is pretty special, and we want to do something special to commemorate that.
Okay, let's do that. And thank you all for helping us grow the channel. Now, Raiders, Packers, 42-24, the final score. The answer is Aaron Rodgers. There's a couple of times today, and we'll get to Chase Edmonds in a little bit, but there's some of those plays and those players where you're like, oh, that was the answer. That was the DFS combination. Well, we'll get to Aaron Rodgers in a little bit, but let's talk about Derek Carr in this one. 293, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. Here comes Mike Glennon in the game. Gets a touchdown there as well. Josh Jacobs gets bounced from this game, Bloom, but he gets 21 for 124. He comes back in, seems to be fine, all those sorts of things. We had a couple of running back scares today. We'll get to Saquon a little bit later, but Jacobs gets 3 for 10. So they said they'd use him more as a receiver. Not really working out that great, 3.3 yards a catch, but working out fantastic for Darren Waller. My God, if you picked him up after week 1, oh, that was just the Broncos. No, it's not. It's him. 7 for 126 and 2 receiving touchdowns today. And that's with Foster Moreau getting some work too, because Moreau got a touchdown, 2 for 24 and a touch. Keelan Doss, 3 for 54, acrobatic catches, even non-catches. Marcel Aitman had a catch for 36 yards. Nobody started him. And you're looking over this team going, all right. No Tyrell Williams, excuse me. No Tyrell Williams. Not necessarily no problem, but it was a lot of Darren Waller today. Fell short, though.
Yeah, this game was closer than the score makes it look. The Packers defense really was bend but don't break in this one. You had Derek Carr, and look, if you're not, I mean, if you have 10.5-inch hands or something, and you can grip the ball like, it's a little orange, then maybe you reach out for the pylon. But guys need to stop doing that. I mean, how many times have we seen in the last year or two the ball fumble through the end zone? It's a crushing play. And they actually were about to take the lead 17-14 in a back and forth game that was limited possessions. I think each team had 3 possessions. It was nearing the end of the first half. The Raiders really had a chance with a defensive stand to go into the locker room with a lead. Carr fumbles through the end zone. Packers go right down the field and score. Packers get the ball back, go right down the field and score in the third quarter. And then this starts to get out of hand. But there was a Josh Jacobs stopped at the goal line in 4th down. There was another goal line stand here. So 3 goal line stands. This is kind of a close game, a back and forth game. The Oakland offense is still very functional under John Gruden. As you said, even with a ragtag group of receivers, Jacobs was the man in this one. And you're feeling really good if you have Jacobs. And the offense is good enough. Defense, I don't know about, but the offense is good enough at least to keep him very viable. Darren Waller actually had a 3rd touchdown. Would have been his first of the day, called back by a penalty. Foster Moreau gets that one later on. Keep him in your streamer Rolodex. Otherwise, he spread the ball around. Derek Carr did. As you said, Mike Glennon got the garbage time touchdown. So Oakland, 3-3, still plenty alive, but they've got a game against a team that's asking themselves some questions. Houston, we'll talk about in a little bit. Then their schedule gets a little bit easier, so don't count out those Raiders if they lose next week at Houston.
Darren Waller, holla.
Yeah.
There. That's cheesy, but it works. By the way, is Rolodex still a thing?
Yeah, I know.
Can you imagine being in that
myself.
company and being like, keep it in your streaming contacts?
Right. I could just imagine. He's going to get his punch cards out and write a new program to tabulate the next play.
Keep it in your streaming Tinder? I don't know.
Keep it in your Palm Pilot? No. See, now if you say Palm Pilot, it might just sound like dirty or something.
It definitely sounds dirty. Let's talk about the dirty Aaron Rodgers. He was the answer today, most every day, but wow, 5 touchdowns, biggest day of the year, 429, 5 touchdowns, no INTs. Touchdowns go like this. And we had, serious concern about who was going to catch passes. We know Devontae Adams with the turf toe. It's just minor. Where's he been? Devontae Adams wasn't going to play, but we got late news about Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. One of those guys came through. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 2 for 133 and a touchdown. The big 74-yarder just boosts his day. Jimmy Graham, 4 for 65 and a touchdown there. Jake Kumaro, 2 for 54, 1 touchdown. Great hair. Alan Lazard had 3 for 42 in this one. And by the way, watch him run next to Valdes-Scantling on that big play, Bloom, because Lazard was like catching him easily. It's like, he's got some wheels there. Aaron Jones gets a receiving touchdown, 4 for 33 and 1 touchdown as a receiver, 12 for 50 as a rusher. Geronimo Allison, 4 for 33. Jamal Williams gets a receiving touchdown, 4 for 26 in that receiving touchdown, and then 3 for 5 on the ground. Aaron Rodgers, by the way, can't forget this because he had 5 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. So you started Rodgers. Whew. You're right.
Yeah, like a spaceman off on his spaceship through the stars, like Buck Rogers. I'm going to make these references that no one gets these. Now you got me really thinking. If there's anybody under 35 that listens to our show, we want to do whatever.
But what about Duck Dodgers? There, I'll make it Looney Tunes.
How about Buckaroo Banzai? Adventures in the 8th Dimension, I think. That's a fun one. The high point of this game for a little bit, Cecil, was Max Crosby. He did the discount double check after he sacked Aaron Rodgers.
I saw that. That was cool. Yeah.
And then I guess that was maybe kind of a curse or something. I don't know. Aaron, and Matt Waldman called this, by the way. We were discussing on the Sunday morning update piece the sleeper appeal of Daniel Jones. And I threw at Matt, like, what about Daniel Jones versus Aaron Rodgers? He's like, oh, his voice goes up an octave. I think, you think Aaron Rodgers have a good game, even though everyone's hurt? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did. He did. This is one of those signature Aaron Rodgers games. I wasn't sure if we were going to see another one of these. Cease. And by the way, in that same game, in that same show, I asked Gene Bramwell who the leading receiver was going to be for the Packers as a way to ask him about all these receivers at once. And he said Aaron Jones. And we laughed. And Aaron Jones actually tied for the lead in receptions. And like Todd Gurley made a wide receiver-esque play on a ball Josh Jacobs did one like this in Alabama, where in mid stride you change the shoulder, you're looking over, catching it. Beautiful stuff, and that makes Aaron Jones' day. And Aaron Jones did go back to being the clear lead back, even though Jamal Williams was excellent on Monday night in that comeback win. We saw Aaron Jones really as the lead back here. It didn't really matter who Rodgers was dealing to. It worked. Jimmy Graham came through. I mean, if Jimmy Graham can come through for you at this point in his career, you know Rodgers is playing well. Marcus Valdez-Scantling with the bum ankle. If you put him in on a hunch, that hunch came through on the long touchdown, had another long downfield catch. Even Jake Kumaro did okay. And it gives you hope for guys like Geronimo Allison and Alan Lazard, the Lazard King, if they can get back. Oh, I forgot to sing for Todd Gurley, didn't I? Because he did score, the Hurley Gurley man, singing songs of love. But, when he averages 2 yards a carry, I forget. Sorry, folks. Rodgers actually ran one in, too. We're not going to sing a song for Aaron Rodgers, but this is the kind of game that, the Packers, it always hasn't been pretty when they've won this year. The defense was looking great. The defense didn't look great in this one. And another team, Cease, gets to dodge Patrick Mahomes next week. So everything's coming up Packers.
Coming up Packers, and woo, how about this one? Because Texans Colts was controlling the AFC South. Who wants to wrestle that control away? It was the home team, the Indianapolis Colts, 30-23, the final score. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson. In this game, both quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson, came into not having been sacked over the last 2 games. Very important one for Brissett because they already ruined Andrew Luck with a dog trash offensive line for years. They fixed it. Okay, Brissett didn't get sacked. And then Deshaun Watson, he's getting sacked 60 times a year. Well, now a couple of games he didn't get sacked. Well, what happened today? Sacks, pressures, hits, sacked 3 times, threw a couple of picks, 308 yards, cool, 1 touchdown to DeAndre Hopkins, cool, but still those pressures, those hits all added up. So, 6 quarterback hits, by the way, on the day for Deshaun Watson. DeAndre Hopkins, 9 for 106 and that aforementioned touchdown. Kenny Stills, 4 for 105 in this one. Darren Fells, 2 for 27. Kiki Cutie, 3 for 25. All right. Duke Johnson Jr., a couple catches, 22 yards, 7 for 34 on the ground. Carlos Hyde, 12 for 35 on the ground. So he was the leading rusher. By the way, Cutie gets a rushing touchdown. Will Fuller, 1 for 6 in this one. So Houston, protect your quarterback and you'll give yourself a better chance to win, even though you only lost by a touchdown.
Yeah, and losing Will Fuller hurts here. And we've seen people doing the splits on Watson without Fuller. Even if Fuller's dropping touchdown passes, it creates a tactical advantage spreading out the field. Maybe slows down the pass rush a little bit. That was a problem in this one. And I think summing this one up, Cease, is it quaint or too old school to say a team is clutch? The Colts just seem like a clutch team. Like they can concentrate their just focus, desire, energy on those key plays and make plays on both sides of the ball. And Watson not making the plays here. There was one key play early in this one where Watson was basically in the grasp and they whistled it dead because they didn't want him to take a big hit. And he still delivered a touchdown that did get stripped out of DeAndre Hopkins' hands. Did he have 2 feet down? Didn't matter because they whistled it dead. And Indianapolis controlled the flow of the game. There was one point whenever Houston came ahead, and then Indianapolis really pulled away from them. And Watson was trying to, a last gasp comeback. Ended up being a disappointing fantasy day for him. No running game. Actually, Duke Johnson got some work to start this one out, but the running game was stalled out against Indianapolis. Kiki Cutie got a touchdown on an option pitch, but not a bigger part of the offense after Will Fuller went out was Kenny Stills making those downfield catches now that he's healthy. So certainly with Oakland up next week after what Aaron Rodgers did to them, we're going to be talking about Kenny Stills and QT2 to a lesser extent on the waiver wire show. With the tight ends, not as much. Jordan Akins had a few catches in the last gasp drive. Darren Fells had a few catches early. Team's 4-3. Nothing's, we sorry Joe that from the Big Lebowski. Nothing is sorry Joe here, but at the same time, these are the kinds of games, they barely won against Jacksonville, or we'd be looking at their season a little differently. The AFC South is still very much up for grabs. But this is a game they'll look back on, and it wasn't a game that they just had some bad breaks. It wasn't a game that they had just gotten this call or that call. It was a game where Indianapolis was the better team on the field. And dare I say it, Cease, Jacoby Brissett was the better quarterback.
Here we go. Jacoby Brissett, 4 touchdowns, 326 passing yards. Now, he was sacked once. So then, kind of broke that sack streak. He was also hit 8 times. So who handled the pressure and the hits better? It was Jacoby Brissett. Those 4 touchdowns go like this. Zach Pascal, 6 for 106 and 2 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton, 6 for 74 and a touchdown. Eric Ebron, 4 for 70 and a touchdown. Jack Doyle, 3 for 21 in this one. Marlon Mack, 18 for 44. And then Nyheim Hines gets like a catch. You thought maybe there'd be a little bit more Himes, but they really just leaned 39 passing attempts. They leaned on the passing game. Obviously, like that matchup with Zach Pascal, and then T.Y. Hilton gets to do his thing, but it's the steady hand of Jacoby Brissett that leads the way.
Yeah, and nothing spectacular as far as the kinds of plays and throws he was making, but he was making them. And on the other end of those throws, T.Y. Hilton was making them, and Zach Pascal. And Pascal, just a hard-nosed player making his way on special teams. Now the Old Dominion product really is elevated because, Paris Campbell's banged up. Deion Kane hasn't really lived up to expectations. I don't know if Devin Funchess will be back this year, but he's really asserted himself as a number 2. And they could have had an even bigger game. They had a Marlon Mack stuffed on 4th down. There was a fumble that set up an easy field goal for Houston. But again, the defense is not what you want, Cease, whenever, and this is a sign of a good team, right? You have a fumble inside your own 20, defense holds the opponent to a field goal. That's, again, talk about these good teams, how the Bills have the offense and defense creating momentum, taking the baton, running with it, or stopping the momentum for the other team. You really like seeing that. So Jacoby Brissett, we're still going to look at in decent matchups. By the way, that matchup next week, coming to Denver. Maybe you get to ask Jacoby Brissett a question or two about how it's been on this journey. Cease.
That's in Indianapolis. I don't think it's in Denver. Really?
I got it.
I hope not.
I have sorry, I have that backwards. But facing Denver, Indianapolis, we save those trips just for the combine. Eric Ebron, this was maybe the best play of his career. It was one that they had to challenge. Frank Reich challenges it. Ebron goes up. I mean, it was beautiful, like a Lynn Swan kind of extension for the ball, pulls it in with one hand at the back of the end zone, gets both feet down. It's the play of his career. He has a good game. Maybe this helps mentally turn some things around, because with Ebron, it's never been, he says it's the kind of play that Noah Fant has to make. Fant and Ebron, like on the same track, really, when we look at them, and you scouted them kind of similarly too, when you watched them on tape. With Marlon Mack, I mean, you get the touches, you get the game script, you just didn't get the touchdown. You didn't get the big runs, but you'll take it. And that's just what's going to happen when you start him. I think that as long as this team's winning, as long as Jacoby Brissett is playing well, as long as the defense is playing well, Max value is still good. So again, first place Colts. And I love this story. See, you never would have thought watching this team play that they suffered who had anything worse happen to them this offseason than the Colts with Andrew Luck retiring. You win. Chris Ballard, this organization, hats off.
Yeah, hats off. You're now at the top. Stay there. Continue capturing those windows. Let's talk about capturing a W, Cardinals and Giants, and it's Arizona that gets that win. 27-21, the final score. Kyler Murray, only 104 yards passing, 28 yards rushing. Okay, well then what happened? How'd they do this? Lots of Chase Edmonds. David Johnson was active, but not 100%. Actually, a carry for 2 yards. Chase Edmonds gets all the points. 27 for 126 and 3 rushing touchdowns. Also 2 for 24 as a receiver. You're looking at the matchup against the Giants like, might be a good day for Larry Fitzgerald. Nah, 1 for 12. Nobody else did. Andy Isabella had 2 for 8 as a receiver. Keyshawn Johnson 1 for 6. Like, there's just nothing here in this contest because Edmonds consumed everything. They didn't even close to the 20, and then Edmonds was getting that 20-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And he got 3 of them today. The answer was Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, who out there? I want someone to take a screenshot if you can of the Rodgers, Edmonds, Jones,
Marvin Jones,
Waller. I want to see those 4: Waller, Jones, Edmonds, and Rodgers in a DFS lineup.
Even the guy that was in the head when I checked before we started recording in the Millionaire Maker, he didn't have all 4 of those.
Right.
I think he had MJJ and Rodgers.
Yeah, I actually had those two in one of my lineups. Of course, it was the team that's going nowhere. But anyway, Chase Edmonds. See, so we've been doing this for a while. There are games when a player announces his presence to the league. That's what it felt like for Chase Edmonds. And I know they didn't add another running back. There are only 2 running backs active for this one. And so we thought that meant David Johnson was okay, but the back, the ankle, he did get a touch in this one. I haven't seen anything definitive yet. We'll be doing some digging, or maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it because everything going on a typical Sunday. If he re-injured something, his back locked up again. But I don't think it matters now. And look, David Johnson's been more valuable to this offense as a receiver than a runner anyway. But you watch Chase Edmonds in this one, and what you saw was just that low center of gravity, that tremendous burst, that fluid change of movement, swerving in the open field, and 3 runs that were not necessarily, I'm not saying they were difficult runs because they were well-blocked runs, but you just saw him run with urgency, run with efficiency, and this was a tremendous game for him. So yeah, it makes Kyler Murray in a good matchup a dud. It makes Larry Fitzgerald in a good matchup a dud. But did you notice that this team is 3-3-1? Did you notice that this team is now starting to do the games, win the games they're supposed to win? Next week, though, they have a game that they're probably not supposed to win down here in New Orleans at the Superdome.
Giants side of things, Saquon Barkley returned 18 for 72 and a rushing touchdown, also 3 catches for 8 yards. Did get a little bit banged up, kind of walking gingerly there on the sidelines, but came back into the game, got his rushing touchdown, so good to go. Daniel Jones, 223, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, the touchdown to Rhett Ellison. Evan Ingram was back, and he got a catch for 6 yards. Golden Tate 6 for 80. You kind of thought that would be, around the line, alliteration type line, 8 for 80. Well, it was 6 for 80. So good job, Golden. Daniel Jones made some nice throws. Certainly that throw to Ellison was just beautiful. But Ingram was back. He didn't do anything. Barkley was back. He did enough, right? So you're happy about that performance. Don't get greedy. And the Giants, well, they fall short.
Yeah. And you can see that this is one of those teams that is, they're not in the Washington, Cincinnati, Miami tier, but they're not a team that we're going to talk about, hey, they're getting things going in the right direction, or you can really see some of the signs of what they're going to be in the future, because the run defense was supposed to be a strength, but not so much in this one. They got a block punt touchdown. Evan Ingram a little banged up, still probably not 100%. So Ellison gets the touchdown here. Saquon Barkley looks a little gimpy, but he got a touchdown here to come through for you. Golden Tate made some plays. I don't know what we're going to see. Sterling Shepard, with the multiple concussions in a year, please be cautious with that. And really, this team is relegated to playing spoiler. They can play spoiler next week at Detroit, but they weren't able to put up much in this one at home. And while we did have that Tampa game, and of course, they can dominate a team like Washington. We can see this is a team headed for a top 10, top 12 pick that still has a lot of work to do. Although some of the moves that we really eviscerated them for in the offseason, trading Beckham, drafting Daniel Jones, maybe not as bad as we thought. And Gettleman's going to get a lot of time to put his program in and see what happens.
And we'll be interested in seeing what happens, that's for sure, as we continue on with just one game left, Bloom. We got to wrap up with this one? Okay, 9-0. San Francisco over Washington. It was downpour. It was, slip and slide for Nick Bosa at the end. I like that. And you really didn't have to do a whole lot. Tevin Coleman had 20 carries for 62 yards. Kendrick Bourne was the leading receiver, 3 for 69 in this one. George Kittle, 3 for 38. But Jimmy G, who threw a pick, didn't have to do a whole lot. 21 passing attempts, 12 of 21, 151 in this one. And San Francisco gets this win. And Kyle Shanahan's just like, get us out of here. Because what was good about Washington? Coaching with his dad. What was bad? Everything else. And I guess that includes the weather, too.
See, I say get us out of here because I'm in a quagmire. This game was played in a quagmire. And it's the kind of game, they could have lost, because we've seen games like this, these weather games. I should have got the AccuWeather guy that's supposed to join us for this one. I didn't realize it was going to be that bad. I don't know if anybody, we knew some rain was coming, but this was, and did they have drainage at that field? Didn't look like it. Like you said, slip and slide. fun here. So it just, if you played Matt Breida, you got banged up, left for a concussion check, got poked in the eye. But I think that this game is going to continue to encourage them to lean more on Tevin Coleman. George Kittle had a carry inside the 5 and slipped. So Marquise Goodwin got banged up. I love Matt Breida. You just know it's not going to be too many games in a row before we see them get some sort of medical check. But good teams went ugly. And this one was pretty ugly. Next week against Carolina, that game's going to be ugly in the sense of two very physical teams, two teams that have gotten things on track this year. A much better game than this quagmire.
Yeah. Is there anything we can say about Washington? Like, seriously, yeah, 81 yards. Okay, cool. But outside of that, I mean, McLovin had a catch for 11 yards. Case Keenum's awful, had 77 yards passing. Like, what? Wendell Smallwood got hurt, right? Did I see that, Bloom? Like this, I'm watching Red Zone. This game was never on.
Yeah, right.
Why
missed field goals?
Tell me what I missed, Bloom. It looked like I missed a lot.
You missed some field goals. That's about it. We saw something that could hold down F1. It was the rain. And we'll see when this team decides to look to Dwayne Haskins. Again, next week they're going to Minnesota. Is that really the time and place? I don't know. This team's headed towards a top 3 pick. They're not going to draft another quarterback next year. So that should be interesting because they could situate themselves to get a haul of picks from somebody who wants to move up, say, ahead of a Cincinnati. I don't know if they'll be ahead of Miami since they beat them. Of course, Cincinnati could go to an 0-16 record. I mean, that's what we're at with Washington. We're thinking draft. We're thinking how are Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder going to mess up the next chapter.
How are they going to do it? Any way they possibly can. That's for sure. That is for sure. That is a wrap for the Week 7 recap. I like this, Bloom. Look, I changed a little picture on the top corner of the video screen.
Yeah,
I should make that larger.
So you should put little secret stuff in there so that people who are watching and paying attention notice it.
Right. And definitely watch the show if you get a chance. I know you're listening on iTunes or Spotify. Watch the show if you get a chance on YouTube, youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM. We certainly appreciate all of you guys for liking this video, commenting on this video. If you did the chat room, that's cool. Need you to comment as well. Subscribe, ring the notification bell because YouTube pushes corporate shows and doesn't push independent creators. So we got to push, and you guys are helping us do that. So thank you guys very much again. Almost to 10,000 subscribers here on our YouTube channel. So that is awesome. And I know we have millions upon millions of downloads on iTunes, and certainly our Spotify audience is huge. Thank you guys very much for listening, checking out footballguys.com, following Sigmund Bloom on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at The Audible. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks. Be nice or leave. Stay tuned and stay frosty.